morning, good evening, greetings to all. Today we're going to start off by explaining that the point of this stream is because the United Kingdom this winter and predicting January, late February, between January and February, so late winter times, that we are going to revert to ESEC, which means electricity supply emergency code. That's what ESEC stands for, electricity supply emergency code, and it's something that was devised by the United Kingdom government to organise blackouts of electricity nationwide in different stages to save electricity due to lack of supply. And I feel like this would also relate to gas as well as electricity, although electricity is in the name. So we're going to be going through the official ESEC codes, the meanings, definitions, and everything like that. This is official government release that I will be going through. I'm not going to go through anything that isn't official. It's easily accessible and readable on the gov.uk website, and that's what I will be going through. Basically, is what ESEC is. What's the point of it? Why do we have it? How does it work? And whatnot. Okay, let's go to the scene here. And okay, so here we've got our lovely little ESEC. We do some. What was I clicking there? Whoopsie daisy. Just go back. We want opera. Si, senor. Okay, that's gonna have to do. Alright, so basically what we're gonna be doing is going through this. So we open opera here. It's the electricity supply emergency code. You're not having any of my cookies. Revised November 19th, 2019. No, I don't know where I'm getting 19th from. It was the 6th of November, not the 19th. It's just because I'm seeing 19 and I'm thinking, November 19th. It wasn't November 19th. It's November 6th, 2019. 36 pages. If a prolonged electricity shortage affects a specific region or the whole nation, whatever. From the 1st of April 2019, there is a legal separation of powers between the National Grid Transmission owner, TO, and National Grid Systems operator. This document has been updated to reflect the new role of it. It was first actually published 1st of January 2005, so it's quite an old document. But, you know, it is what it is. All the updates. First published, revision of the code, and then last update was 6th of November 2019. Now, something similar was introduced in the 1970s in the United Kingdom, for a similar reason, I would presume. Just going to full screen here. So yeah, this is from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which was, funnily enough, the job given to Jacob Rees-Mogg under Liz Truss's 44-day leadership, which has now been replaced by Rishi Sunak. Revised November 2019. Okay, so we're going to it. Crown Copyright 2019. You may reuse this information, not including logos, free of charge in any format or medium under the terms of the Open Government License. To view the license, I accidentally clicked. I'm free to copy, publish, distribute, transmit the information, adapt the information, exploit the information commercially and non-commercially. Acknowledge the source of information in my product or application, including or linking any attribution. Yeah, so this is from the official government website. That's the wrong thing. From the official government website, gov.co.uk. So if you do want to read it in your own time, make sure you head over there. But yeah, I didn't mean to click the link. Any inquiries should be sent to these people. Alright, so there's an introduction, definition of terms, ESEC event process, when and how ESEC will be used, use of emergency powers, protected sites, variable rota, disconnection plan, sequencing of load blocks, other priority needs in an ongoing emergency, severe shortages of power, restoration of supplies, and so on and so forth. So let's go right in with the introduction. We will be going through as much as we can today. If I decide to stay reconnected. Oh man, I hate my internet. Okay, so the Electricity Supply Emergency Code, ESEC, describes steps which the UK government could take to deal with a civil emergency as defined in section 96(7) of the Electricity Act 1989, any natural disaster or other emergency which, in the opinion of the Secretary of State, is or may be likely to disrupt electricity supplies. So this could be decided this could be brought in as a result of the Russian-Ukraine war, or an electricity supply emergency of any an electricity supply emergency of the kind envisaged in section 3(1)(b) of the Energy Act 1976, there exists or is imminent in the United Kingdom an actual or threatened emergency affecting fuel or electricity supplies, which makes it necessary, in Her Majesty's, this needs updating now because it's His Majesty's opinion, that the government should temporarily have at its disposal exceptional powers for controlling the sources of availability of energy. So basically, if they see that there is a crisis linked in with energy that or electricity, that there isn't enough, they can then control the electricity supplies here, there and everywhere, whatever, in the King's opinion. So the King would need to say, yes, you can go ahead with this. For it to, well, go ahead, the King would have to sort of agree on it. It sets out the actions which companies in the electricity industry should plan to take and which may be required to deal with such emergencies. Now, there's a whole debate on companies. I personally believe that electricity companies should be nationalised, which would then mean that it'd be easier for the government and King, whatever, to control the electricity supplies, whatever. It would make it all easier, more efficient, but that's in my personal opinion. Not everyone has the same opinion, it's just a lot of people do. Right. In the event of an emergency, ESEC enables an equal distribution of electricity supply to customers as far as reasonably practicable, whilst ensuring that pre-designated protected sites maintain supplies for as long as possible. Let me reread that. ESEC enables an equal distribution of electricity supply to customers as far as reasonably practicable. So ESEC allows customers of these energy companies get an equal amount of energy, and it's not sort of unequally distributed, like, oh, the people who live at this house are my favourites, so I'm going to give them electricity instead of the people at this house, whatever. I guess, and that the pre-designated protected sites maintain supplies for as long as possible. So basically, the electricity companies maintain electricity supply for as long as possible. Should these measures require to be introduced, it is very likely that there would be accompanying appeals to the public and industry to reduce electricity demand. So basically, reduce the demand of electricity for the benefit of the public and the industry. The actions described in ESEC are not used to handle sudden shortfalls in generation or deal with day-to-day repair and recovery of faulty or damaged parts of the transmission and distribution networks. Such matters are handled by the National Grid in its role as owner of the National Electricity Transmission System in Great Britain and the distribution network operators DNOs, using powers available to them in the grid code and or in company emergency recovery plans. However, long-term and significant damage to the system or prolonged shortfalls in generation could result in the National Grid Electricity System Operator NGESO and DNOs looking to the UK government to implement the arrangements and powers described in ESEC. Likewise, if a problem is looming and might be solved or ameliorated by early action, then ESEC or aspects of it can be considered. So basically, to summarise it, ESEC regulations and actions will not be implemented. Let's say, you know, if your energy provider has an issue sending you electricity. So, like recently I had Wi-Fi outage that lasted 10 days. I had no internet for 10 days. Things like that will not be dealt with by ESEC or any of its sort of actions or plans of action, anything like that. However, if courses of action are prolonged abnormally and they're having issues giving you the electricity, then they will turn to the government for assistance and introducing aspects of ESEC, but not the whole thing. ESEC is subject to continuing development, review and testing. The Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS, in conjunction with the Energy Emergency Executive Committee, E3C, are responsible for carrying out this work. So basically, ESEC policies, whatever, probably going to change. If the Secretary of State proposes to make any amendments to ESEC, BEIS will first consult with E3C, network operators and licensed generators affected by the proposals. In consulting them, BEIS will set out in detail the amendments proposed together with an explanation for these and take account of comments, proposed modifications before deciding whether to amend ESEC. So, if the Secretary of State wants to amend ESEC or add something else, BEIS will consult with the E3C and network and operators, whatever, and licensed generators, of which the proposals and amendments will affect, to sort of make sure they've got the full go-ahead or they have the full rundown, and once all consulted, BEIS will tell everyone in detail, will set out, sort of show, look, these are the amendments that have been proposed in detail, explaining what they mean, and will implement and take into account basically the comments and whatever on the proposed modifications before deciding whether to amend ESEC. Yeah, so my little explanations are there to sort of expand on the point a little bit so you properly understand, and also to help me understand a bit. Okay, so let's go through the definitions of terms. Activation schedule, bracket S, so we'll say schedules. Schedules for activating or deactivating each load block together with the detailing time for load block switchovers, which are derived from the implementation Rota Plan issued by NG. I feel like that's NG. The text is a bit weird here. Let me look at the S there, can we? Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's just my screen was being a bit peculiar. Anyway, as I was saying, Schedules for activating or deactivating each load block, together with a detailed timing for load block switchovers, which are derived from the implementation Rota Plan, issued by NGESO and treated as a set of instructions for implementation by network operators as activation schedules. So basically, when electricity will be activated or whatever, as sort of set out in the implementation Rota Plan, whatever. Associated load: electricity which is unavoidably supplied to a site which is not a protected site due to its connection to the same circuit as that of a protected site with no means of isolation. So so basically, electricity of which doesn't come directly from a protected site, but is in the same circuit and is connected to a protected site, although itself not being directly a protected site. If that makes any sense, which it doesn't make much sense, but yeah. Discrete feeder: an electrical high voltage circuit which is used solely to connect an individual site to a point of supply on the network operator's system. This circuit must be capable of being protected from disconnection by the ability to switch the remaining circuits connected to the point of supply by either local or remote operation. So basically, should be able to be controlled, I guess. Cobra. This is what they call the COBR, but very popular during coronavirus times. Cobra, Cabinet Office Briefing Room, COBR, Cobra. The locations from where a committee is set up to coordinate the actions required to be taken within the UK government in response to instances of national or regional crisis or during events abroad with major implications for the UK. So this could apply to the war in Ukraine, the declaration of war on the United Kingdom from, I think it was Iran. I think it was Iran. It was either Iran or Iraq. And the reason I get them mixed up is because they both have IRA in it, and the only difference is the last letter. I know that they are different countries. Okay, so we're just gone. The composition of a COBRA meeting depends on the nature of the incident, but is usually chaired by the Prime Minister or another senior minister. So basically, it's discussed by the Cabinet Office, so the people who are selected by the Prime Minister. I guess. Electricity supply emergency: an emergency affecting electricity supplies which makes it necessary that the UK government should temporarily have at its disposal exceptional powers for controlling the sources and availability for energy. Basically ESEC, I guess. We're kind of in electricity supply emergency, are heading towards on. Energy Emergencies Executive Committee, E3C. If you don't understand why they're called E3C, it's because these three words begin with E, and this one begins with C. So 3 E's, E3C. A senior forum providing engagement and proactive information exchange between government, wider industry stakeholders, regulators and interested parties on energy resilience issues and priorities. Senior forum providing engagement and proactive information exchange between government, wider industry stakeholders. Okay, so basically a committee that informs people, gets information from government and whatnot, and gives it out to, well, the interested parties on energy resilience issues and priorities. Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BEIS. The lead government department for emergencies affecting the energy sector. I think that one's a bit straightforward there. BEIS Emergency Response Team, ERT. I guess that would come from emergency response team. We're having a bit of connection issues. I'm going to start again from here. BIS, emergency response team, ERT. The team within BEIS which will, in the event of an emergency affecting the gas and or electricity networks, provide the interface between industry and government. The ERT is responsible for primary liaison and briefing with ministers for COBRA, so they will attend COBRA meetings. Liaising with external stakeholders to build situational awareness and analysing the implications for public safety, energy supply, business and wider BIS/government policy. So basically making sure that external stakeholders and whatever understand. Let me wait for frames to get back a bit. Okay, so now that we're sort of reconnected again, they make sure that basically that they oh fucking hell. we're not having an ESEC moment now, are we? They communicate with stakeholders and other sort of people, whatever, stakeholders, and they inform them on situations about public safety, energy supply and whatnot. Yeah, so that's basically their job, to communicate with the stakeholders. Coordinating lines to take in the wider communication strategy. So basically, how to communicate. Handling parliamentary interest. That one's pretty straightforward. And we're sort of disconnecting here. Let's try and keep it up. Handling parliamentary interest, straightforward. Maintaining an audit trail. So basically making sure that everything is as it should be. I'm very close to stopping and restarting streaming, but that might not help. So give me a second here, we'll go to technical difficulties. Okay, we seem to be leveling out now, so we can go back to scene here. Okay, so we just explained what the emergency response team does for BEIS. Hopefully you managed to catch all of that. If you don't catch any information or you don't understand it, whatever, do make sure that you search up ESEC and go to gov.co.uk or just gov.uk. There's no .co there because the government isn't a company or a corporation. It is its own thing. So go to gov.uk, ESEC, and read up on the PDF yourself. Grid code, an industry code that specifies the technical requirements for connection to and use of the National Electricity Transmission System, NETS, in Great Britain. Compliance with the grid code is a requirement under the Connection and Use of System Code. I want to say CUSC. System code. National Grid is the code administrator for the grid code and maintains it. All changes to the grid code are subject to industry consultation and approval by Ofgem or Ofgem. So basically, the requirements and sort of agreements of use of electricity from like the national grid. Indicative Rota Plan. The Rota Plan decided upon by the BEIS ERT on the day ahead of an electricity supply emergency and used to communicate publicly the potential impact on customers. I hate that term, customers, just say consumers. Depending on the expected duration of the emergency, this plan could be published up to a week ahead on a rolling basis. So basically, it's the notification before the electricity goes out that the electricity will be going out, when and how, basically. That will be contained in the indicative rota plan, sort of indicating what's going to happen. Implementation rota plan, the rota finalized by NGESO from the indicative rota plan, and which minimizes the level of disconnection. It will be used by NETSO to derive activation schedules and to communicate publicly the impact for the following day. So basically, when looking at the indicative rota plan, it sort of goes through and makes sure that it can effectively reduce the amount of people who go without electricity, whilst also making sure that electricity is saved, and communicates publicly how it will impact the disconnections or whatever that will take place the next day. Yeah. Licensed generator, any person who has been granted a generation license under Section 6(1)(a) of the Electricity Act 1989. I would assume that this is someone who can generate electricity and give it to people. That's what I'm assuming. I don't know. I could read through the Electricity Act, but that would be a completely different thing. So I would suggest that you go out of your own way to give that a looking into. But I would assume that this is someone who is licensed to generate and distribute electricity. Load blocks. Each distribution network is divided into 15 by 5% load 18 times 5% load blocks with a suffix letter A, B, C, D, etc. Did I say A, B, C, E, D? I mean A, B, C, D, etc. Attributed to each. All connected customers or consumers are assigned a block letter corresponding to the relevant point of connection on the network. A block letter of V indicates that the site is on the protected sites list or is protected from rota disconnection due to associated load. So basically, load blocks is areas or places, whatever, or distribution network and their areas, whatever, split up into 18 5% load blocks. Basically, it's split up into 18 blocks, of which are given A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R. I think. I don't know, but it's that sort of thing. So you're just sort of segregated into groups based upon your energy connection or whatever per network. And if you've got a V on your block letter or whatever, or if your block letter is V, you're in a protected site. And you're protected from disconnection, which you'd want to be in V, I guess. Network operator, any person who has been granted a transmission license under Section 6(1)(b) or a distribution license under 6(1)(c) of the Electricity Act. So I think I got licensed generator wrong. Because this seems to be what I said the licensed generator is, but network operator is someone who can transmit the electricity, I suppose. I'm not going to get into details about network operator and licensed generator. These are things you're going to have to look into yourself to understand. I don't personally understand. It seems rather straightforward by name, but if you want to look into them even more, as it says, look under Section 6(1)(a) of the Electricity Act 1989 to understand what a licensed generator is, and look under Section 6(1)(b) or a distribution license under 6(1)(c) of the Electricity Act 1989 for more information on those too. National Grid Electricity System Operator, NGESO. The system operator for the National Electricity Transmission System, NETS, in Great Britain. So basically what operates, well, the electricity transmission. A protected site. Any site that is protected in the terms set out in ESEC. A list of protected sites is compiled and kept up to date by network operators, and that's rather straightforward. Rota Plan, one of 18 plans that set out the level of sequence of load block disconnections and reconnections. Together, the Rota Plans are another way of illustrating the content on the content of the variable Rota Disconnection Plan. A Rota Plan, once it has become the indicative Rota Plan, is used by NGESO to derive the implementation Rota Plan and activation schedules. So, basically, how and when each load block is going to be disconnected and reconnected, and illustrate the way it's all going to work, I suppose. I have seen the charts for the 18 different plans, and the way the 18 plans work is it goes up in intensity. So plan 1 is where only one load block per time segment, which is 3 hours, is turned off, so one at a time, whereas 18 is, well, it's, give me a second here. Anyway, oh, so I say anyway, let's move on from this. I'm being shut down. Okay, seems to have leveled out. This does annoy me just as much. Sorry if my audio is fairly low. Oh, don't go down! I'll just turn it up a bit and hope that'll do. Okay. Can I go back to reading? So I was explaining what the Rota Plan is and what the 18 plans are. So as I was saying, plan 1 is where one load block at a time is turned off per scheduled time period, and plan 18 is where all 18 load blocks are turned off, basically. That's what that is. And I can assure you, although it says subscriber, I am not subscribed to myself. I don't know why it says that, maybe because I am the host. Yeah, I do have internet issues, so it is rather irritating, but we'll just carry on. Rota disconnection procedures, pre-prepared plans held and produced by each network operator. They take into account the local network configuration, physical characteristics and limitations, load blocks, protected sites, and the control tools used to operate the network. So basically it's just plans for the disconnections, which are set out and take into account just all of the main techie shit, if that makes sense. Once again, if you need any more clarity on this, I do suggest you look into each individual term. These are just the terms. We get into the proper things on page 7. Anyway. Standby generation. Electricity generation equipment which is capable of providing a supply of electricity adequate for the continuation of activities to avoid damage to plant for the continuous operation of manufacturing processes or for safety reasons. So basically, generation of electricity of which is adequate enough to avoid damages to plants and things like that, to make sure the manufacturing process or whatever continue, and all for safety reasons, to make sure that things don't just fucking blow up, I guess. And Variable Rota Disconnection Plan, VRDP, the core plan used to establish the disconnection reconnection of electricity supplies in an electricity supply emergency. That is quite a self-explanatory description. Okay, ESEC event process. So event, emergency powers, variable rota plan, indicative rota plan, indicative, probably read it wrong earlier, but indicative rota plan or indicative. Implementation of rota plan and activation schedules, network operators to implement rota disconnections, then BAU. Right, so timeline is 48 hours maximum. BEIS ERT formed BIS SOS decision, BIS ERT to determine level of load reduction and names indicative plan, NGESO responsibility, DNO responsibility, BIS ERT disbanded. And these ones are specifically under industry reporting from BIS ERT to determine level of load reduction and names indicative plan. And figure 1 is, so this would be figure 1, I would presume, seeing as it's the only figure, is the overview of the emergency process from event indication to business as usual. So BAU is business as usual. So yeah, and we're gonna have to go to another technical difficulties. I feel like I will. Yeah, it's so unreliable. should be fine to continue again. I'm so sorry about all of this. It's pissing me off. Alright, so when and how ESEC will be used. Use of emergency powers. In an electricity supply emergency, it may be necessary to restrict customers' consumption of electricity. Restrictions over the longer term can be achieved by one or more of the following methods. Public appeals by the government of the UK for voluntary restraint. Orders or directions under the Energy Act 1976 requiring restrictions on consumption by industry, commerce and other undertakings. Directions under the Energy Act 1976 or the Electricity Act 1989 requiring rota disconnections and associated restrictions. I don't know how to add any more commentary to that. That is just sort of as it is. I don't need to. I personally don't need to supply extra commentary, but it's probably best content-wise as my kilobytes a second drop astronomically, and I lose nearly 15% of my stream. But we push forward through the lag. I know a lot of that was missed, but I'd already had everything read. All the main information was read. I was just saying that I don't need to provide commentary, but it's best if I do. Alright. Orders and directions under the Energy Act 1976, the Electricity Act 1989 to restrict consumption by industrial, commercial and other sites may contain a schedule exempting certain premises and purposes from the scope of the order or direction. The categories exempted in these schedules are likely to be more extensive than the categories of sites protected from rota disconnections. In order to use the powers under the Energy Act 1976 to the fullest extent, an order in council would need to be made and be enforced before any order could be made or any directions could be given. So I would assume that means, because it is quite confusing, I would assume that means that some places will have their own disconnection schedules separate from the main rota disconnections. That's what I'm assuming. I don't know any information that I don't know, or I could get a lot of extra commentary wrong. Make sure that you do fact check and read in yourself if you want to make sure that you get things properly right. I'm just making assumptions based upon common sense of what one would sort of believe it to be. Unless you've got any suggestions, of which you could just leave in chat and I'll give them a read when I have a nice amount of kilobytes a second. Anyway, let me move OBS a little bit closer so I can have a nice little, yeah, I can see it there. Alright. One of the orders which could be made under the Energy Act. Okay, give me a second here. Kilobytes going down. Didn't mean to. Yeah. should be fine now. I'm saying should be, I'm not too sure. Let's just hope I am. I managed to grab me a nice little can of Dr. Pepper to keep me going. Alright. We were on 3.3 here. One of the orders which could be made under the Energy Act 1976. Why does it always disconnect when I'm saying that? To restrict the use of electricity in industrial, commercial and other premises would require consumption to be reduced by a certain percentage. This is to be distinguished from a direction instituting rota disconnections. It's an alternative to an order which would restrict the use of electricity to specified days of the week. If a percentage reduction order was made, it might also be necessary for directions to be given to suppliers requiring them to provide information showing sites whose consumption was above a certain level so as to enable the UK government to monitor observance of the order. So basically it's to reduce the consumption of buildings without reducing the usability of them. Not institutions, whatever. To restrict the amount of electricity or energy of which they are using. Yeah, that seems like an adequate summary, although not a good summary, an adequate one nonetheless. Alright. If the BEIS ERT considers that rota disconnections must be introduced, the Secretary of State may implement the emergency powers in the Energy Act 1976, making an order in Council. Once that order in Council is in force, BEIS can give a direction to all network operators affected to implement a schedule of rota disconnections across their licence areas. Pardon me. Throughout the period of time of the emergency. Under this direction and within the provisions of the Grid Code, NGESO will instruct network operators to restrict the supply of electricity to sites rather than protected sites by rota disconnections to achieve a specified level of reduced demand. The period over which the overall process of rota disconnections continues, together with the levels of disconnection, will be decided by the Secretary of State in light of advice from the BEIS ERT. Subsequent changes to that period and or levels of disconnection will be confirmed by the giving of an amended direction. A lot of information to take in there. So basically it's all up to the Secretary of State, can call an in-council or whatever, and they will receive information on schedules and whatnot. A lot of things I don't really understand there. Some of you might understand it, some of you might not. If you need to reread it, it's on the screen now, but also, as I've said multiple times, you can go and read it off by yourself if you want to. When I publish this to YouTube, I will leave a link to it in the description of the video. So, 3.5. A shortfall in available generation could initially be handled via grid code arrangements. If the shortfall were to worsen or be prolonged, this may make it necessary for the Secretary of State to invoke ESEC. Alternatively, the electricity supply emergency could dictate an orderly and planned move to rota disconnections without utilising the grid code arrangements if, for example, the situation developed over the weekend and it is clear that there is likely to be a substantial difference between demand and available generation on Monday. I probably cut out there. Let's read that last sentence again. When I have kilobytes a second, that would be nice. This happens so much. It didn't happen last time I streamed. I think The later on I stream, the worse the internet gets. That's what I think. That seems to be the case. So I sort of am forced to stream early. Anyway, let me reread that sentence whilst I have kilobytes. Alternatively, the electricity supply emergency could dictate an orderly and planned move to rota disconnections without utilising the grid code arrangements. If, for example, the situation developed over the weekend, then it is clear that there is likely to be a substantial difference between demand and available generation on the Monday. So basically, ESEC regulations could be allowed without the utilisation of the grid code arrangements to make sure that everything remains nice and smooth and proper, I guess. Okay, how many pages until we get into the proper shit? So it's quite far down. But they're just graphs. We are on page 9. Protected sites. Sites are protected if they need to have their electricity supply maintained because of 1. A national or regional critical need, 2. Public health and safety issues, 3. The potential for catastrophic damage to high-value plant. So things like nuclear power plants, I suppose, would be a protected site. Hospitals and whatnot would probably be protected as well. The site's details will be held on a list maintained by the network operator for the area of supplies. This will be known as the Protected Sites List, or PSL. For further details, see section 5.1 below. Section 5.1 is on protected sites. So guess that makes sense. Right. Variable Rota Disconnection Plan. 3.7. ESEC utilises a Variable Rota Disconnection Plan, VRDP, the format of which is set out in Annex 1. The VRDP is intended to ensure that the available supplies of electricity in an electricity supply emergency are shared as equitably as possible amongst all non-protected sites. I feel like that's self-explanatory. The VRDP divides non-protected sites in a network operator's license area into 18 groups of near equal demand. For the purposes of ESEC, these groups are referred to as load blocks. Supply to these load blocks is sequenced for rota disconnections in the VRDP. It sets out the nominal 3-hour disconnection periods, i.e. 8 periods in any 24-hour day, and respects the need for equality of treatment between non-protected sites as far as reasonably practicable. The rota level and level of disconnection will be based on the shortage of supply. During an emergency, if available supplies diminish, higher levels of disconnection will mean that an increasing number of load blocks are disconnected in any one period. I think that's extremely crucial information because it practically explains everything that you will ever need to know about ESEC. Your basic understanding should be 3.8 about the VRDP. It's the main part of ESEC. 3.9. At levels requiring disconnection of up to 4 load blocks, the VRDP is designed to concentrate disconnection periods on the 3 days of Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday and Saturday for any one load block. Trying to get as many words in as I disconnect. Oh, coincidentally. As I'm talking about disconnection. We got the main important information in though. Sequencing of load blocks. The 18 Rota Plans each contain a master sequence of load block disconnections, nominally starting and finishing within the 8 periods of the day. See Annex 2. During an electricity supply emergency, NGESO will regularly update the BEIS ERT on the levels of disconnection considered necessary. NGESO will normally advise a BEIS-ERT no later than 2 or 14 hours each day of the Rota plan. It can each day of the Rota plan it considers necessary for the following 24-hour period, scheduled to commence at 00:30 or 12:30 a.m. When advising the BEIS-ERT of the Rota plan required, NGESO will take into account an optimum margin of remaining generation available and the level of flows on interconnections with neighbouring transmission systems. The BEIS-ERT will confirm the indicative Rota plan to be used, taking into account the national generation/demand position and shape of the load curve, no longer than the 15th hour or 3 p.m. NGESO will seek to minimise the amount of Rota disconnection for the following day and will generate an implementation Rota plan from the indicative Rota plan. Okay. Disconnected a lot there, but it's best to just power through, innit? And just give up like I have been doing. From the implementation Rota plan, NGESO will derive a detailed activation schedules of Rota disconnections and issue these schedules to network operators by 17 hours 30 or 5:30 p.m. the day before. The schedules will confirm detailed timings for the disconnection and reconnection of load blocks and shall be treated as a set of instructions for implementation by network operators. The detailed activation schedules are required for individual network operators to stagger when load blocks are disconnected and reconnected to match the minute-by-minute demand for electricity to available generation and avoid excessive load swings. In the worst case, where 9 load blocks may require disconnecting and 9 different load blocks reconnecting, this changeover period could take up to 60 minutes. So basically, it could take an hour for you to reconnect. So you may be told that you will be reconnecting at 3:30 p.m. Give me a second here. So you may be informed that you... Oh my goodness, stay connected. You may be informed that you will be reconnected at 3 p.m. one day, but if it is a 9 disconnection sort of Rota plan or whatever it mentions, you could be seeing your connection back at 4:30 or 1 hour after the scheduled reconnection. As it says, this changeover period could take up to 60 minutes. NGESO will continue to review the national demand/generation position and may reissue modified implementation Rota plans and activation schedules if necessary. The BEIS-ERT will keep the level of disconnection and choice of Rota plan under continuous review throughout the emergency in consultation with NGESO, and if necessary may change the indicative Rota plan at any time. So basically they can change the plan. They can change the Rota plan and the activation schedule. Alright, other priority needs in an ongoing emergency. Come on. Stay fucking connected, man. Come on. It's not that difficult. Alright. Other priority needs in an ongoing emergency. Should an emergency be prolonged, it may be in the public interest for additional sites to be considered as protected sites within criteria for receiving excuse me, this status, for an example, given essential pharmaceutical companies manufacturing vaccines or antiviral medication during an influenza pandemic. COVID. How did they? This was last updated November 2019. Don't disconnect there. I'm not making conspiracy theories. I'm just pointing out exactly what it says. I swear a government agent is watching and disconnecting when information is said that they don't want people to find out. Sponsoring government departments may make representations to the BEISERT directly or through COBRA if essential services are significantly impacted. This process may take several days to complete, and although directions to network operators to include new protected sites may be given after consideration of the wider consequences/benefits for the public against the availability of supplies, this should not be assumed. I didn't quite understand that part, so that's up to interpretation from you, of course. I didn't really understand what that meant. Organisations should ensure that they have robust business continuity arrangements in place to maintain adequate electricity supplies and not rely on these arrangements. Okay. You want to work? Man, come on. This is all readable online. I must specify if I have to end the stream early. You can access all of this online. You can see where we're up to on the priority needs 3.14. If you miss any information, I do suggest you go and read it. Here, what if I stream with the technical difficulties thing and I just explain exactly what I'm seeing on screen verbally? Get scammed. Alright, severe shortages of power. This seems rather important here, so I'm hoping that I don't disconnect. Piss off, government agents. In the event of a severe shortage of electrical power, it may not be possible to maintain equal distribution of available power supplies while protecting the industries and services on which the well-being of the nation depends. In this eventuality, the BEISERT will advise the Secretary of State according to the circumstances. It is considered impractical to enforce statutory restrictions on domestic customers. Therefore, it will be necessary to use the non-protected site load blocks to set out the VRDP in Annex 1 for as long as possible. All protected sites are expected to, as far as is reasonably practicable, reduce load broadly in line with the level of disconnections applied to non-protection sites. As the situations worsen, protected sites may be directed to reduce their consumption to the minimum load necessary for the avoidance of damage to a major plant. The needs of protected sites may vary daily or even by the hour in an extreme situation. In the event of electricity supplies being insufficient to meet the needs of all protected sites within their licence area, network operators may need to exercise discretion in allocating the available electricity supplies. In such cases, priority should be given to the maintenance of life and to minimising the risk of disasters, which would involve loss of life or major damage to plant. It is recognised that the electricity industry's own requirements need to be met, particularly those to maintain generating capacity and nuclear safety. In the event of a partial or total system shutdown during an electricity supply emergency, network operators will implement the operating procedures set out in the grid code so that affected demand may be restored in the shortest possible time. So basically, in a situation where lives can be threatened and natural disasters seem rather imminent, life will always come first, and basically the people will be treated with the utmost care. Basically, they'll be top of the range. They'll be the main focal point. Restoration of supplies. As supplies of electricity are restored, it may be necessary for the Secretary of State to give further directions on rota disconnections following advice from the BEIS ERT. When supplies of electricity have been fully restored and stabilised, the BEIS ERT should inform the industry of a formal standard shutdown of ESEC. So basically, the Secretary of State will give information, whatever, and directions following advice from BIS CRT, and then they will inform the industry that ESEC has been sort of shut down as supplies are restored. Okay, we're getting closer and closer to finishing. We're getting there. Network operator responsibilities for protected sites, page 12. Rota disconnection procedures, 4.1. Each network operator is obliged by ESEC to keep up-to-date procedures for the introduction of rota disconnections. Excuse me. These should be available for activation as soon as possible and within 48 hours of the Secretary of State's decision that ESEC must be implemented. That's the end of the sentence. I acted as if the sentence would continue, but yeah. Except for protected sites, the procedures will apply equally as far as is reasonably practicable to all customers supplied through the networks of network operators. This includes non-embedded customers, in essence customers other than network operators receiving electricity direct from the nets. Network operators may identify areas of their network within a load block that contain one or more unlicensed generators. Depending on the circumstances at the time, these areas may provide a net output onto the network which is deemed sufficiently significant, such as disconnection, such that disconnection should be avoided if reasonably practicable. Consequently, some sites could find their supplies maintained despite the expectation they would be disconnected according to published information. Protection of unlicensed generators would only occur in exceptional circumstances and is at the discretion of the network operator of the time. Protected sites 4.3. The protected sites list (PSL) should contain the name, address and business activity of each protected site, with network operators taking all reasonable steps to keep this accurate. Network operators should write out to each site owner every 2 years to validate their eligibility for protected site status and provide an updated PSL to BEIS on the 1st of October, enabling BEIS to review and ensure the criteria for listing are being applied consistently. Section 5.2 below sets out the criteria for being designated as a protected site. Network operators are required to use reasonable endeavours to maintain supply to listed protected sites during an ESEC activation period and will give as much notice as possible if protection from disconnection is at risk. Okay, let's just go with it. If we disconnect and stream ends, then we disconnect and stream ends. You know what to do. The protected site list, PSL, yeah, we've read that. Network operators are required to use reasonable endeavours to maintain supply listed protected sites during an ESEC activation period, and will give as much notice as possible if protection from disconnection is at risk. Network operators should inform successful applications for applicants for protected site status that their sites have been listed. Unsuccessful applicants for protected site status where the applicant has grounds for disputing the network operator's decision may seek a determination from BIS Energy Resilience Team as to whether they should be given that status. BEIS may take such a determination having discussed the matter with the network operator, the relevant government department, and the applicant. Commercial implications. 4.7, page 13. If rota disconnections are directed, providing that an order in council under the Energy Act 1976 is enforced, the Secretary of State will, where appropriate, grant an authority under Section 4 of the Energy Act 1976, authorising network operators to disregard or fall short of their statutory or contractual obligations to supply to such an extent as is necessary for them to comply with the directions on rota disconnections. 4.8. Rota disconnections constitute a permitted discontinuation of supply under Regulation 29 of the Electricity Safety, Quality and Continuity Regulations 2002. Network operators should make reasonable efforts to give adequate notice of disconnections. There is no requirement under the regulations to report the effects of rota disconnections to the Secretary of State, so you need to be told about the disconnections before it happens. The BEIS ERT would require at least daily reporting by network operators regarding the ongoing situation in their license area. Precise timings and other requirements of the reporting would be set out by the BEIS ERT at the time. Okay, protected sites. Page 14. We're getting closer to the end. We're nearly there. On page 14. Come on, we can do this. We can do this. Protected sites. Introduction. Page 14. 5.1. The criteria for receiving protected site status are set out below. Customers who consider that their site or sites meet these criteria can apply it to their network operator for the sites to be part of the protected sites list. By seeking and securing protected site status, customers are also agreeing to certain obligations. I don't want to read it out, but it's probably best if I do, to make sure that I cover all grounds, because when it comes to contracts and legislation, whatever, you've got to know that absolutely everything. So the criteria, 5.2. The criteria consist of two main elements, both of which must be met. Firstly, a customer's site must fall within the list of approved designated services set out in the table. It's set out in Table 1 for activities where the definition includes major or of national significance. The relevant lead government department or devolved administration will have a say in the network operator's decision, so that's basically like mayor or, Scottish government or whatever, or the Welsh Assembly and whatnot. Secondly, protected sites must also meet the additional criteria in Section 5.3 below, and customers must agree to the obligations in Section 5.10 below. Or 5.10. By exception, sites which do not meet the above criteria make a representation to the relevant lead. By exception, sites which do not meet the above criteria may make a representation or representation to the relevant lead government department for consideration of protected site status, given that the criteria and obligations set out in sections 5.3 and 5.10 below are met, and the significant impact of not having protected site status can be demonstrated. Okay, so Table 1, list of approved designated Services. So gas reception terminals, storage installations including boosting and compression equipment, gas compressor stations, and principal development and control sites for the control of gas supplies and emergency procedures, lead government and whatever, BIS. Oil refineries and vital oil pumping stations, licensed electricity generators and licensed network operators, sites with a continuous manufacturing process not sustainable through standby generation, where regular shutdown for 3 hours is not possible and would cause significant financial damage. So it's obviously bringing in finances. Major airports and associated control facilities, significant railway operations, ports and docks of national infrastructure significance. These ones are controlled by the Department for Transport. Essential water and sewerage installations, a major location for essential food manufacture, processing or storage. It is by Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Scottish Government or Welsh Government. Hospitals is agreed with NHS Foundation Trust, Primary Care Trusts, Acute Trusts, Local Health Boards in Wales, Welsh NHS Trusts and NHS Health Scotland, Department of Health, Scottish Government or Welsh Government. And digital and telecommunication services, where there is national need for continued operation, comes under Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Emergency services are regional, of regional significance. Excuse me, here I disconnect again. Regional. Home Office, Department of Health, Scottish Government or Welsh Government. Armed Forces sites that provide civil protection support, Ministry of Defence. And financial services, where there is national need for continued operation, HM Treasury. That would be His Majesty's. Yeah. So that's the list of Table 1 approved designated services. There is additional criteria. 5.3, page 15, to ensure the total demand from the PSL remains at a manageable level, the following criteria will apply to protected sites. The site does not have standby generation and has demonstrated that it's not possible to install standby generation, and either the site is connected to a discrete feeder, or, in the opinion of the network operator, maintaining supply during rota disconnections would involve retention of not more than a marginal amount of associated load, or the network operator has been required to the list to list the site by BEIS pursuant of section 5.5 below. Okay, so now we move on to process for listing protected sites. Sites shall only be listed in the PSL if customers have informed the network operator in writing that they consider their site's activities fall into one of the categories set out in Table 1. The network operator agrees that the activities fall into one of these categories, and customers have also informed the network operator in writing, and the network operator agrees that the sites meet the additional criteria. 5.5. If a network operator is unsure whether a site's activities fall into one of these categories, it will inform the customer accordingly. The customer may then A. provide further clarification to the network operator on the site's activities, or B. approach the lead government department or devolved administration responsible for the service or industry concerned, which will advise BEIS the site's activities fall within the approved designated services, whether it should be listed. Only on BEIS's written instructions will the network operator include the site on the PSL pending resolution of the matter. On the PSL. Pending resolution of the matter, the site shall not be listed. 5.6. If the network operator considers that the site's activities fall into one of the categories and A. the site does not have standby generation, B. the site is not connected to a discrete feeder, and C. maintaining supply to the site during rota disconnections would, in the opinion of the network operator, involve retention of more than a marginal amount of associated load, then the network operator will advise the customer that they should either pay for a new modified connection by means of a discrete feeder or install standby generation. Yeah. 5.7, if the site is not prepared to install standby generation and pay for a discrete feeder, the network operator will refer the matter to BEIS with an estimate of the amount of associated load which would need to be kept on supply if the site were to be protected. BEIS will consult the lead government department or devolved administration concerned and with the network operator and will instruct the latter whether the site should exceptionally be listed. Pending resolution of the matter, the site shall not be listed. Sorry, I said shite. 5.8, if the site does not have standby generation, it will be required to provide a justification to the network operator as to why it's not possible to install standby generation, the silly cunts. It doesn't say the silly cunts, but I think it should. I just think it should. 5.9, if the site has standby generation but the service it provides is deemed vital to region or nationally rather than locally, then the customer may approach the lead government department or devolved administration responsible for the service and will ask a BEIS to consider whether the site should be listed. Pending resolution of the matter, the site shall not be listed. Obligations for protected sites, 5.10, page 16. Well, it says 15 in the bottom right, but it's actually page 16. By applying for and being given protected site status, protected sites agree to meet certain obligations. In the event of the network operator being directed to make rota disconnections, protected sites will reduce their consumption by a percentage broadly commensurate with rota disconnections as far as reasonably practicable. Protected sites must retain records of consumption and make these available to BEIS for monitoring purposes if requested. Protected sites that are deemed to be of national or regional significance and which cannot reduce consumption while still providing their service may agree an exemption from its obligation. Protected sites will notify the network operator immediately if their activities change and no longer meet the criteria, and of any change to the customer's name and registered contact details. The network operator will also confirm with protected sites every 2 years that they still meet the criteria to qualify for protected site status. Failure to disclose details to the network operator at this point may result in removal from the PSL. Okay. We got there. We got there eventually. End of page 17, which means now we go to Annex 1. Variable Rota Disconnection Plan. So this is what's been mentioned and referenced continuously throughout the document. Oh. Okay, so Annex 1 sets out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, time period and whatnot. So time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. They're the load blocks. This is the time, so it starts at 30 minutes past the day, so 013, which is 12:30 a.m. to 3:30, which is 3:30 a.m. So it's 3-hour blocks of times. As it says, increasing percentage levels of disconnection derived by dividing the maximum amount of load available for disconnection into 18 equivalent amounts. Although each disconnection period is a nominal 3 hours, the amount of switching involved at higher levels of disconnection may delay the restoration of some blocks by up to an hour. And you can see them all in one here. Let me just make sure that I scroll it perfectly so you get to see all of it. Yeah, that's every bit of information on it. That's every single day, every period, every time, and every load block in one. Let's not go to 100% here. Okay. What's extra? Absolutely fuck all. Okay, Annex 2 now, I believe to be a little bit more straightforward, is Rota Plans. This is level 1 disconnection, which is each period is of nominal 3 hours duration. Detailed timings of disconnections and reconnections will be confirmed by an activation schedule issued by the NGESO. Otherwise, this is the default Rota Disconnection Plan, showing from A all the way through to U, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I guess I did my counting wrong earlier. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, Q, R, S, T, U. That gets to 21, but for some reason that gets to 18. I must be just really bad at counting. Anyway, it shows the periods, which start at, well, 0:30, 12:30 AM, and exactly which load blocks are turned off in each period. Level 1 being 1 load block at a time. As you can see, every single load block does get turned off eventually. That's no question, every single one does get turned off at different times, whatever. So it is. Level 2 disconnection, it's the exact same description. However, level 2, obviously it looks a bit different here. Don't know why I'm disconnecting. But yeah, level 2 disconnection is basically where 2 load blocks at a time is turned off. The black squares mean off, white squares mean on. And that works in absolutely everything, by the way. Like pixels and whatever, black is off, white is on. So, yeah. That's for that one, so if you want to have a bit of a look at that, then here's your chance to have a proper good look at that. You can, obviously, go out at your own time and give it a read. Level 3 disconnection, 3 load blocks at a time. This is how it would be set out. Nice to look at, to be honest. Nice, pretty patterns. Although you shouldn't really worry about the patterns. You should more worry about what your load block is and when you're going to be disconnected. But yeah, it's the level 4 disconnection. It's the same description here, except obviously there's now 4 load blocks disconnected at a time. Still very nice and satisfying to look at. Weirdly, although I'm sure when it happens it's not very satisfying to look at. Level 5 disconnection is where, you know, 5 load blocks are off at a time. Still looks weirdly organised, I like it. Level 6 disconnection, 6 load blocks are off at a time. Still rather nice look at that. Oof, love a bit of that. Level 7 disconnection, where 7 load blocks are disconnected at a time. Yeah, there's not much else to describe each disconnection. You just sort of look at it, it's like, whoa, fucking hell. Level 8 disconnection, 8 load blocks are disconnected at a time. Then level 9 disconnection. I looked at the description, it's the exact same for each one. Where 9 load blocks will be disconnected at a time. Level 10 disconnection. It's pretty fucking mad, really, that you know, you've only got 6 hours a day, or maybe even 9 hours a day. 6. So we've got 6, 9, 6, 9, 12, 12, 12, 6, 9, 12, 12. It is organised, but it's imagine only having like 6 hours of of electricity a day. It's mad, really, to even begin to fathom. Level 11 disconnection, where 11 load blocks will be off at a time. Madness, really. Level 12 disconnection, where 12 load blocks will be off at a time. At this point, no one seems to be getting... Oh, no. Load block H eventually does get 12 hours of electricity. Can't say that about the rest, though. I'm not going to look at them all. Level 13, disconnection. Hello. Fuck it, I'll take advantage of the 7,000 bits a second. Level 13 disconnection, 13 load blocks at a time turned off. Absolutely insane. Level 14 disconnection, 14 load blocks at a time are off. Just fucking look at that, it's mad. Level 15 disconnection, 15 load blocks at a time are turned off. And level 16 disconnection, 16 load blocks at a time are turned off. Which, as you can see, you're getting about 3 hours of electricity a day. Level 17 disconnection, it's now deteriorating at this point. 17 load blocks are active per, well, 17 load blocks are turned off per period, and as you can see, that basically means that it's one load block is on at a time. And then level 18 disconnection, every single one of them is off. And that is ESEC. That is what ESEC is, the official government release there, which you can access on gov.co.uk. Gov.uk.co.uk isn't a thing, just on gov.uk. You can read it, download it, go through things that I might have misunderstood, misinterpreted, interpret it your own way. Don't blame me for your viewpoints if they are seen as negative. But that is what ESEC is. Rather important for us, especially seeing as it's predicted to sort of be introduced this winter, late winter though. And it's predicted, it might be, it's not definite, but it's always best to prepare. It's always best to prepare for things like this. So, yeah, make sure you do check it out yourself. If I disconnected here and there and you didn't hear every single part, whatever. And that leaves me now to just thank you all for watching. Please join my Discord. Me just watching it fucking disconnect. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the little explanation there. Make sure you join my Discord. Click the link attached to my Twitch profile. Join the Discord. Follow my socials. And thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.